High-grade Geara Doga, full frontal use. Hey again everybody, it's Robert184, 2Rs2Bs Gundam Reviews.net, and for the Geara Doga, this is the full frontal use online exclusive. Anyway, you've already seen the unbox and all the individual parts, some pretty cool looking ones there for this 2009 design, and now it's time to take a look at how they work together as a mobile suit. And when he's all put together in those very, very famous or infamous colors with a new variation there with the black and white there on the sleeves, I'd say that this guy's looking very cool, thanks in no small part to the fact that it's carrying on that Zaku descendant role quite well. And I wanted to say thank you to everybody who listed all the Zaku variations in the previous parts. What I'd love to hear even more is all of the Zaku successors after Hyzak, etc. and so on. Anyway, the Geara Doga is looking great. I like the way that he's got big and beefy legs, and he still keeps those very familiar shoulders, but just overall a lot more heft and a lot more menace than you're going to get from the Zakos back in First Gundam. In terms of the colors, the pink and the red, well, you can never really go wrong with those two together. The black and the white, you're not really going to notice them unless he's on a rotating platform like this, so you're going to see the back. But overall, that yellow adds a nice little bit of a good look to it for the third color, and the head, especially with that commander's antenna on there, I think it works for me. In terms of mobility, what are you going to get? Well, the front skirts are going to cup them all the way, so you can do a full frontal, full-on kick if you wanted to do that. Off to the side, because these are on old-school ball joints, you're not going to get too much. If you get the arm out of the way, you're only going to get that much, but remember that the hips do move around there if you want to have him boogie for some strange reason. For the upper body, you can twist the waist there, and the shoulders are going to move very well. You can see that they're going to come forward like this, and you can reach across, but you're not going to quite be able to touch the other shoulder, but still a valiant effort there. Remember that these parts up here are able to move around all over the place. Hopefully you saw that when it was getting put together. You can rotate the shoulders there. The arms here are going to give you that good bend there. I'd say 135-ish, and the hands are just going to be on regular ball sockets there. For the head itself, though, you'll notice that it can move up very well, which sort of lends itself well to launching forward with these cool dynamic space looking down on everybody views, which is exactly what I think full frontal does to a lot of people. Nonetheless, but then again, is he the kind who's always looking down? But then again, it's looking good either way, and you can always do the menacing mono-eye looking down look as well. For the flat foot test, you're going to get about this much off to the sides. And front to back, it's around here, and remember that these feet do not bend at all. They're strictly going to be flat like that. In terms of weaponizing, it's got a great connecting point here on the hand, so it's going to fit in there very nicely when you put in the trigger finger hand. However, the shield, it's fallen off on me a couple times there, and you're also going to have these things falling off. So it's going to be a little bit tricky to get that in there, and remember that you do have a couple of ways that you can position the shield once you put it on, either right on the back of the arm, V Gundam style, or off to the side. Armed up, I'm going to say he looks a little bit more menacing, but most of that menace is going to be coming from the left hand or defensive hand, which is somewhat surprising, I guess. Anyway, the Geara Zulu hand of the weapon over there is just going to be a little bit too smaller, so it looks for a beefy guy like this. But on the other hand, you've got that big bulky shield on the one side to go along with the shield that's already in place here. And these weapons, beside the fact that they're going to get in the way a little bit, and it's not going to allow you with the shoulders here, you're not able to twist the shield forward because they're going to bump up into that spike up there. If you didn't have those in there, you'd be able to bend this part out so it won't interfere, but as long as you don't mind it being at this kind of angle, it's going to work pretty well, and so far, no weight issues. And though it's really hard to argue with the cool color scheme, remember if you had the old school Geara Doga, either the green or the blue one, that you'd have those thrusters there on the shoulders standing out a little bit more the way the red does here compared to the blue, well, the two tones of blue, and these weapons down here on the shield, same thing, you're not going to be having the same color duplicated. Comparison time, you can see that the Geara Doga here is going to be quite a bit shorter than this kid that just all of a sudden sprung up when he was angry, a teenager one day. The Unicorn Gundam in his destroy mode, hulked up here. You can see that he's going to be stretched up quite a bit, but overall I'd give the edge in terms of bulk and overall power. I would certainly say that it goes to the more grunty suit there on the left. I'm not joking when I say this guy isn't a Jagan, but nonetheless, he still fits the motif pretty well here for the unicorns, even though this guy is an MSV over here. But nonetheless, you can see that the Jesta has a grunt suit for the Federation, as makes sense. It's always going to be a lot skinnier and a lot more gym-ish compared to the bulked up old Zakos. And if you consider Full Frontal to be the reincarnation of Char, well, remember Char was flying around in a Mark II, and how cool would it have been for him to keep one of those and paint it up either pink or gold or white? Nonetheless, there were 3. Camille kept the only one, but there it is next to the real grade Mark II, where you could see that the height would be a little bit taller if I straighten out the legs there. But you can just see the detailed difference here, where you're going to have these big wide panels here, not a lot of details, you're just going to have that gray and yellow there to break up the monotony of the 2 colors. Whereas over here you're going to have the multi-colors of the lighter gray there to go along with the blue, the yellow, and the red. So overall, certainly the edge goes to the real grade, but remember that this guy is certainly going to do the job of filling in the high grade niche. And yes, masks truly do grant power to anybody who's going to fight somebody flying in a Gundam, but you can certainly get an idea of the differences in the mecha design going back to the late 80s, and what we're seeing today with Gundam Age and his successor, I suppose. Well, one of the many Char successors there, in the form of Zeehart Galette and his Geara. On to posing, where all of a sudden that Geara Zulu weapon, it still seems a little bit small, but it's not going to be that bad of a thing overall. Nonetheless, where you are going to have issues here is just with that shield. You can see that the weapons are going to get jumbled up there, and you would have no problem bringing the hand across, but again, the shield is just going to get in the way of too many poses there, although you could minimize that just by taking out those weapons underneath it. Coming across the other way, you're not going to have any difficulties getting the right hand where you want to, no problem at all looking down the barrel. But the left hand, because it sits off to the side, remember that you're always going to have that issue of it being a little bit awkward if you try to bring it across the body this way to block. This part attaches here, although not all that securely if you want to take out this little peg there, if you want to have an extra bazooka, which of course is ready to be deployed in space against any helicopters that near. Something to be careful of though when you're swapping out the weapons here is, again, this is going to fit very well thanks to that post that it's got in there. That's just going to plug in there nicely. However, you've got to be careful that these parts here are not going to pop off. They do pop off very easily. They go back in well, but you've got to be a little bit careful that when you're putting them on, that you don't rub these part of the stickers, because otherwise these are going to both peel up. And because this is where you're going to see 90%, you don't want that part to get ugly and crinkly. Well done, arm. And I'm just going to show this off as is here, but like with most other bazookas in the Gundam universe, you're going to have a problem here because it's going to fit into the shoulder very awkwardly, and because of that, you're not actually going to be pretty limited in the number of poses that you can do with that. You can twist the whole arm, but you're not going to be able to do a whole bunch else with that. And again, you can just see how problematic that this shield is going to be. Again, probably best off just stripped of all the excess weapons. But for aerial poses, you can take that weakness and make it a strength, because this way, if you change this part around, you can either have the extra peg facing the inside or the outside, and you can also, remember, move this around 90 degrees, so you've got quite a few choices. You can have it on the inside, outside, or the back of the arm. Nonetheless, when it's got those weapons facing forward, it's going to look like a little bit of fun, especially as he's looking down there. And for whatever reason, I just think that looks better on an action base than it would on the ground. Now, the shield's going to be blocking the majority of this pose if you look at it from the front, but the beam sabers or the beam sword are going to look great once you've actually got it in hand. And again, one of the pluses here of the shield that I should have mentioned is that you can flip it around this way or that, so you can have the bending part where you need it to be. And when you do this kind of pose, it's certainly not going to be interfering with the shoulder in any way, shape, or form. But unlike the beam sword, I'd say that this beam ice pick is not going to do much good unless you're in an asteroid belt and you have to get some ice for your drink here. But I'm still quite impressed with the way that the shoulder armor can get out of the way, especially if you take off this bulky shield. But nonetheless, I wonder if the Lumber Gundam is going to have somebody giving him a run for his money, and whether we're going to have any space pirates that this guy has to go deal with. So that's going to wrap up my look at the mobile suit part here for the Geara Doga full frontal use. It's not bad overall, but anyway, stick around for my final verdict, where I'll have a list of all the good and bad things that I could pick out, and I'd love to hear your verdict with a comment down below. Do you like this in green, blue, pink, or overall, what do you think of the playability and the extra features and some of the problematic ones that you may have seen here? Anyway, everybody, why don't you let me know what you think, and we'll see you next time. Thanks as always for watching. Bye. Did somebody mention space pirates earlier? Or are you talking about those cheesy 90s ones that aren't in the manga? Well, I guess they were, but didn't come from the manga.